and welcome to episode 2 of Wearisma's new Disrupting the Timeline video podcast, where we challenge, discuss, and analyze key topics driving conversations on and offline. I'm Jenny Tsai, Wearisma's founder and CEO. Today, our topic is the business of sustainability. We have 4 great guests joining us today. Our first guest is Diana Verde Nieto. Diana is the co-founder and CEO of Positive Luxury, the company behind the Butterfly Mark, a unique interaction trust mark awarded to luxury lifestyle brands in recognition of their commitment of having a positive impact on people and our planet. The mark provides wordless reassurance that a brand can be trusted. She founded the first international sustainability communications consultancies in 2002, where she built to international success with a presence in 5 markets, including China and the USA at the time of exiting the business in 2008. She holds a degree in global leadership and public policy from Harvard Kennedy School. Diana is a globally recognized figure in the sustainability field, honored by the World Economic Forum as a young global leader in 2011, and subsequently being trained by former US Vice President Al Gore. She serves on many advisory boards, frequently teaches at Cambridge Judge School and Oxford Said School, and was recently given an honorary professorship at Glasgow Caledonian University. Hi, Diana.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you. We also have Yetunde Beutler. Yetunde is a dedicated entrepreneur in luxury skincare. As founder and CEO of Essènci, a newly launched farm-to-skin sustainable skincare brand, she works closely with skilled craftsmen, artisans, and farmers in the south of France and Corsica, and her team in Paris, adhering to a long-term vision of clean beauty for the brand and pioneering the way for conscious and luxurious skincare. Yetunde has dual French-American nationalities and has launched several successful ventures, including import-export for French wines and a fashion council, the Innovative Fashion Council of San Francisco, Innovative in California, which created a sustainable fashion collaborative that involved designers, government, business, and media. Yetunde holds a BA in French and Political Science from Williams College, a master's degree in business from the Grande École de Commerce, l'ENSEC, and MBA in Sustainable Management from Presidio Graduate School. To complement her academic degrees, she also studied aromatherapy. She has also worked with leading brands such as L'Occitane, en Provence, and in luxury skincare styles at Nordstrom and Borges. Welcome, Yetunde. Next, we have Laura Henning. Laura is a former UN climate negotiator and founder of Faldan, the world's first ethical luxury fully foldable bag. She graduated with a master's from the University of Cambridge and spent almost a decade working in environmental policy and UN climate negotiations. She serves as the vice chair of the UN Adaptation Fund, overseeing efforts to address climate change in developing countries. Realizing that there was a gap in the market for a product that actively helped reduce our wasteful habits, but that was still a desirable luxury product, Laura took an accessories design course at the London College of Fashion and spent months folding origami shapes and calculating the best size and volume to make the Faldan bag as useful and purposeful as possible. Hi, Laura. And last, but certainly not least, is Kaye Carmichael. Kaye is a luxury and fashion marketing consultant specializing in 360 marketing, communication strategy, and brand management. With over 15 years of experience in the industry, she has worked for a number of global luxury brands, including Michael Kors, Mulberry, and Chanel in-house and agency side. She completed her MBA in international luxury brand management at Essènci Business School in Paris in 2010, and a business sustainability management course with Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership in 2020. Hi, Kaye.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm very excited to get stuck into this conversation. I'm going to start with you, Diana, and kick off this conversation discussing positive luxury and its effort to help luxury brands demonstrate a positive social environmental impact. First of all, what was your motivation behind co-founding Positive Luxury?
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this amazing panel with incredible women. So it's great. So thank you so much, Jenny, and thank you so much for all your kind of support during the years. So my background is sustainability, as you talked before, and also my personal background is the fact that I grew up in this dictatorship in Argentina. So I've always been very passionate about the human rights side of things. And then when I discovered the whole environmental side, the two together kind of made absolutely perfect sense. And I thought, this is what I really want to do for the rest of my life. The only nag, that was 1999, which was a little bit too early to actually be thinking in this way. But I started my first sustainability consultant back in 2002. And for the last, 20 years, I've been banging my head against a brick wall, literally, until 2 years ago when the whole world decided that actually this is what everybody cares about. So for me, every day is Christmas Day because everybody wants to have the same type of conversations I have been wanting to have for 20 years and nobody wanted to listen about. So I am so excited that this is now in the forefront of governments and businesses and people. So my motivation for Positive Luxury is not just mine. I cannot take all the credit. I have an amazing co-founder, Karen Hanton. She is the founder of a company called Top Table, who she said to open tables, so restaurant bookings. And she's a technology pioneer. So when in the year 2000, I was talking about sustainability, she was talking about aggregation business models online with dial-up internet. So imagine the conversations when I go and said I have a technology challenge. Ignored, for sure. Anyhow, what we wanted to do with Positive Luxury is to democratize the language of sustainability, to make it accessible to people, and for people at a click be able to understand what companies do. So we haven't created a trust mark that is it. When you click on it, you can see all the little bits and pieces that you might or might not care about as an individual. So animal testing or fair pay, forestry, FSC, packaging, and so on. And you start understanding the brand over and above just, okay, this is a blanket certification, like what we do. So I guess, in a nutshell, the motivation is really kind of make this very simple to consumers, and when you're going to make the decision to vote with your money, put it in brands that actually are investing in the things that you care about, because brands today have the responsibility of care about our world like they never have this before, because governments are not going to solve this problem for us. So I think that this agenda is more important than ever has been before, and especially now after COVID. So hopefully I answer your question.
Yes, very much so. And it's very wonderful to hear that it's Christmas every day. If we can continue this trend, hopefully there's a great future in this space. So you described the buttermark that authenticates the positive impact of luxury brands. Why do you think it's now becoming increasingly important for brands to validate their sustainability practices? You mentioned, there's obviously recently there's the COVID that's very much impacting the world, but any other factors?
Of course, I mean, what we do is not just validate the brands, we actually understand where the risks of the brands are, so risk assessment in terms of their sustainability, and actually help them to think differently about the future. So the innovation piece. So we assess brands in a governance, social, environmental frameworks, and then the innovation against a delta of time. So the cut-off points are 2030 and 2050. So ideally, you should be innovating by 2030, not by 2050. I mean, the big changes, and I think what is more important is the fact that, you know, pre-COVID, we have seen sustainability being something that it was incredibly important for people within the organization, but mainly came from the bottom up. So the passionate young or not so young people that really wanted to make a difference and you want to have a reason to get out of bed without coffee and get to work and work for a brand that was really exciting. But after COVID or during COVID, what we have seen is a massive shift for this to be a leadership agenda. So the CEO and the board have taken in account sustainability in terms of the innovation of the business going forward. And the type of conversations that we are witnessing at board and at C-level are, you know, what does good growth mean? So not just growth, but the difference between growth and good growth. What does good growth should have? Because in a trajectory of just plain growth is not going to take us very far. The second point is the investment communities really have woken up to the fact that companies that invest today into mitigating the risk of climate change in the future and internalizes the externalities that sustainability as a whole brings, they will be much more resilient in the future. And this is not just about a manifesto or something nice that you keep somewhere, you know, in a wall. This is about activating sustainability throughout the organization, link it into your payments, into your salary receipts, into your bonuses, and actually looking at how everyone, not just the CSR department or the sustainability department, all that is great and good, but really it's like how everybody in the organization is actually working towards the goal that the organization wants to achieve, and these goals are beyond profits. So it's about, you know, kind of how do you have a regenerative business model? So how you you know, take out what you put in. How do you make sure that you capture your emissions, not just through offsets, but actually minimize them? And the last one is how you don't leave anyone behind. And that is from a, you know, pay gap, women's agenda, diversity and inclusion, and of course, you know, that goes over racial, also religions diversity. So this is, I think, in a very, very big, broad picture, kind of the things that are driving this agenda forward today.
That's very that's certainly a very comprehensive change, and it's good to hear that from a bottom-up model now we're starting to get a lot of leadership and stakeholders to start to comprehensively change the way we do things, and that's fantastic. Speaking of brands, sustainable practices, coming to you, Laura, what inspired you to start Faldan?
Thank you. Thanks for having me here as well. I am asked this a lot, and I think all people who start brands and businesses, like all these women here at the panel as well, it's never a very straightforward journey. It's sort of lots of things coming together at the same time. And it happened to me, but there are very clear two drivers that were in my life that spoke to me, and I thought I want to do something about it. One of them, as you mentioned in your introduction, I worked many years in international climate negotiations, and it's great working on international regulation with very big projects, global projects around the world, trying to help communities to adapt because we already have climate change is amazing. But sometimes it can feel, sitting in Geneva in these numerous meetings, sometimes it feels like you lack the real action that you want to be part of. And I remember very clearly there was a meeting and we were talking about a few African states that are very much affected by sea level rises. And I thought, you know what, how about I do something closer to home? How about I work towards the change in a developed world, in a city, in an urban environment where I live. So I wanted to be a little bit closer to the action point rather than big overarching projects. So that was one. The other thing was that I always like nice things in life. And we were just beginning talking about sustainability in luxury world in 2008, 2010. A few of the companies started to do that. But what I found is that for me, sustainability is not only in the materials that we use or the processes that we use in order to make the product, but also how we consume. So I started questioning my own consumption habits and, why do I need so many bags? Why do I need so many shoes? Why do I need so many things? And I started questioning the utility and function of consumer products, and especially the luxury goods, which I like myself. And this is where I came to the point where I thought, if we all, including me, had a bit less, but only the most beautiful, sustainable and products, bags, shoes, clothes, whatever, then maybe the world will be a better place and we will have less. So I really wanted to create a bag that is very functional for a working woman, because more and more women, they're no longer, luxury is no longer about a man buying a gift for a woman. It's about a woman earning herself and buying it for herself. So I wanted to create a bag because I always ended up with lots of papers after my meetings that I could carry around that would function. So, going about this versatile product, because a lot of the luxury goods are still not very versatile. They're made to be beautiful. They're made to be luxurious. And luxury, in essence, a lot of the times is seen as antidote to a utility. So I wanted to solve this problem of function, utility, luxury, and sustainability, and see whether I can rise to that challenge. It took me many years before I could create a luxury ethical foldable bag, which we now signed for a patent. So it was a long journey, but it came from few places at the same time.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a great journey. We're also very lucky today to have two brands owners with us. So coming to you, Yetunde, tell us a little bit about Essènci and your motivation behind creating it.
Okay, I'm off of mute. So obviously, Essènci is a French skincare brand. That's a luxury skincare brand that's farm to face. And it's been in the making for the last several years, and we're in the process about to launch. But along that journey, initially what motivated me, or why I wanted to create Essènci, was that I wanted to create a company that had a purpose, a sustainable company. So a company where its DNA was about sustainability. And also at the same time I wanted to create skincare products that were healthy for women. And one of the reasons behind that is, in today's world, I think, as a lot has advanced, say, since like 2008, and we're seeing more and more clean beauty brands and sustainable brands, but which is a great thing, but you still have a lot of women putting on a lot of products night and day that have synthetic ingredients, that have toxic ingredients, and they're putting it on, they're ingesting in their bodies. And so I wanted to create something that would be healthy for these women. And so that kind of was the drive behind Essènci, outside of all the aspects that are around sustainability in creating this company.
Great. I guess a question for Yetunde and Laura, as you create these sustainable brands, how do you think about approaching to consumers and kind of get everybody kind of into this, sort of bring them into the journey and this shared responsibility, with the vision that you have?
It's interesting you say that, and ask this question, because it's not an easy journey. It seems that everyone is very much aware and desiring the sustainability, the ethical products. I was somewhat surprised a little when we launched at the London Fashion Week earlier this year before COVID, and we were showcasing, you know, the functionality of this new luxury, beautiful bag. It was very few people asked about its sustainability credentials, you know, despite the fact that we talk about, oh, you know, we want this, there is a revolution, people asking for things. If you go down to, as a brand that is looking for markets and trying to build a consumer around the product or around the ethos that you are creating, it's not that easy. People will ask how much it costs, and then does it function, is it beautiful? And what I realized, a lot of the companies, and I want to hear from Diana because I'm sure she has an answer to that. Some companies, luxury companies, even choose not to communicate that they do so much about sustainability, because you have to choose very carefully what you communicate so that people buy. But then it's your job as a brand, for us, that it's in our DNA that we want to be sustainable. So whilst you buy us because you like our product, we make sure that it is ethical and we do our bit. But then the second point I will quickly make about during the COVID and during the slowdown and everything going online, I realized what a power it is with influencers. There is less and less people listen to other people. So, you know, I realized that people get zone out when you talk too much about what are the ingredients of a cake. They want the cake. So I realized that, you know, even having all the information, how amazing recycled lining that we make, how our boxes are made from recycled coffee cups, is less important than engaging in a discussion on more ethical and conscious consumerism and lifestyle. So, you know, I realized sometimes it's a little bit more effective to talk about the lifestyle, the philosophy you're going down to. People engage a little bit more when you say, you know what, instead of having 10 bad bags, or not bad, but like cheap bags that are not made very well, why don't you save and have one? It's a little bit or less of a headache to go out. You don't need to choose every day new clothes. So you have only few. And then, you know, suddenly you are leading a more sort of ethical, conscious lifestyle. But then you have, if you buy only 1 or 5 things during a year, you have a bit more time to do a research. And I think, you know, this is the way Faldan is trying to find a way to communicate about our ethics, rather than directly going down like the whole list of materials and how we're making things. But I'm sure others have other experiences.
Sorry. So, like for Essènci, for us to begin with, there are a couple of points I want to go on. Number one, I wanted to say that I do think that as the consumers or our clients have evolved over the years, I think more and more folks are interested in the sustainable aspect. The example I always use is the wine industry. You know, you had years ago where you didn't have, on the wine bottles, there were brands that were, the way in which they were creating their wines, like the farming was it was in eco wine, it was organic, but they didn't tell the story about that. And I think that now you see, when you go to, at least when I go to restaurants, I see more and more bottles that are saying that they're bio, and it's in a positive aspect. But so I think, you know, people are becoming more, they are interested about that. I know at least for us at Essènci, our strategy originally was direct to consumers. So it was all, with Essènci, our objective was always to sell the majority of our products via online, digitally, before pre-COVID. And one of the things that we felt, and I think is still important with the brands, is about kind of being authentic. I think in today's world, because you've got the consumer and the clients are inundated with all this information, all these images, I think what sets us apart, and I'm going to go back with these images, a lot of them have been photoshopped, or it's like the perfect life, the perfect image. And I think that for us, at least, one of the things I think that that can be effective, or we feel that will kind of help build a community is being as authentic as you possibly can, and showing, I guess, the real aspects of life, and at the same time, besides just talking about, we're a sustainable company, talking more about, instead of saying we're sustainable, talking about the values, telling the story, and talking about the lifestyle. And I think that is an effective way for future brands. At least that's the way we're approaching it. And I think if you do that indirectly, people will be more open to it. And I think that you'll connect on an emotional level, and therefore one will be able to get more clients to go on your journey with you and share that journey with you. I don't know if other folks have other ideas or opinions on that.
Yeah, very, very good point. Definitely from kind of our data, we're actually seeing, much more online audiences in general, especially a lot of, whether millennials, Gen Z, they're really engaging more with brands that do kind of promote sustainable initiatives and make it much more of a part. But like you said, authenticity is always a part. I want to kind of go to Kaye to look at her experience working with numerous great luxury brands, and also starting this sustainability journey. What are your thoughts in terms of marketing sustainable products, communicating that, and then while staying authentic in a way? And Diana, it'd be great if you also let us know your thoughts on that as well.
Thanks, Jenny. And actually, I wanted to kind of join in the points we were raising in the last question raised by Yetunde and Laura, because it fortunately seems like now there is an audience that is engaging more and more with sustainability. It's finally becoming on everyone's radar, something that we need to think about, need to consider. And as you said, Wearisma data has shown that engagement on social is really driving that change, but also data from Boston Consulting Group has shown that 75% of Americans now view sustainability as either very important or important in their purchasing decisions. And that's really optimistic and really hopeful. And so it's about ensuring that your brand's communication is authentic and consistent with your values. But also, as Laura said, people want to buy something that's beautiful, that's desirable, and it should be automatic that it is produced in an ethical, responsible, sustainable way. And hopefully the fashion industry, as well as the wider industry, is moving very slowly in that direction and arguably needs to move more quickly. But that, for me, is the key thing. It needs to be a balance of ensuring that you are authentically an ethical brand, ensuring that how your product is made, how your product is distributed, and even how your product is used across its lifetime. Is it recyclable at the end? Is it able to be repaired? All of these things need to be considered to ensure that you are authentically a sustainable brand. And then when it comes to the marketing and communications around that, that is, of course, an important pillar, but also what do you stand for in terms of who you are as a brand? So yes, sustainability will be an important part of that, but you do, of course, want to also build a desirable brand, a brand that stands for values, whether that is natural skincare, ensuring that products that are being used on your skin are all natural, or whether that is it's empowering women by providing them with a bag like Faldan that's very functional and helps them with their day. Where do you stand as a brand on your bigger, broader values? Because consumers are bombarded with choice now, and they're going to connect with your brand based around your values and your authentic and consistency with those values, which is really key. And just one last point to add to that is that I find it very interesting because this panel of women have an incredible background in terms of climate experience. And whilst I have a stronger background in terms of luxury communications, and my personal sustainability journey has really been over the last few years, it's becoming an increasing focus of mine. And now that I've become a consultant, I'm aiming to work with brands that I align with their ethics and their values and their beliefs. And I think that I'm an industry professional who wasn't cognizant, who wasn't engaged in sustainability until the last few years, really does reflect on the industry and the challenges that it has been facing, or kind of sweeping under the carpet. And so it's really fantastic now that there are brands that are starting that have those key values at their core, but bigger brands are really making commitments and, you know, committing to specific carbon measurements by certain, you know, setting themselves very clear benchmarks and goals to achieve. And so it's really exciting that this moment feels like there's finally some momentum gaining behind it.
It's very, yeah, it's very interesting, the kind of part you mentioned about the sort of kind of walking the walk, and also, you know, but in terms of communication, to think about both doing that for sure, but also having the brand kind of broader kind of, I guess, positioning and personality and all the rest of it. I think it's very, very interesting point. Diana, what are your thoughts around sort of, with the brands you work with, how can brands kind of almost capitalize on this kind of groundswell of interest, and really while staying authentic in the way they talk about it?
Well, I really like what Laura, Kaye, and Yetunde said, because there's a bit of all of it together. What we see, the first thing, to Laura's point, is luxury brands are doing an absolute terrible job at communicating what they do. And Kaye probably knows this firsthand, as your background started with luxury, so you know what I'm talking about. So luxury changed the meaning, and used to be about opulence and big and, you know, kind of quite extravagant. And there is a new luxury. I mean, that was a thing of the past. And luxury actually moved to a new luxury, which is about craftsmanship and about quality, always been about that as well. But the aura about luxury was this idea of excess. Today, that's not true anymore. Luxury are the small things, are the minimalistic things, are the things that give you joy. And luxury has changed its widths as well in terms of what the dream is about. So I think that there is a shift now for luxury brands to start talking about what are they doing beyond targets and compliance. So, and this is not a dig at the UK, it's just literally, everybody's like, okay, I want to reduce my carbon emissions by 2025 by X, or water or waste or this or that. You should have been doing that 20 years ago. Consumers, we don't care. That's your license to operate as a business. If you don't do this, don't have a brand, because that's the minimum that you have to do in order to enter. What we'd like to see for brands, and what brands need to start doing, that is a little bit what you guys talked about, is just, what is your purpose beyond the bag, beyond the skincare, beyond the beautiful coat, beyond the taxi company, beyond what you do? What is your purpose? And I mean, what we are looking at is at least at Positive Luxury, is this notion of positive impact. Positive impact doesn't mean you have to offset. Positive impact means is, what are you putting back that gives you a license to operate in this world that is overcrowded, that we take from Earth, from our planet by July, what we should be consuming by December. What gives you that license to operate? And I think a lot of, like I said, like leadership has started to realize that unless they think in this way, they will not have a business. And Laura, you talked about it earlier, which is about how you talk about sustainability. And I think that shift also is about how do you bake it into your product. So it's not an add-on. It's not like this t-shirt is organic, or this t-shirt is made with, don't know, pay the minimum wage, or whatever it is that you say you do. It's about how do you bake it off the outset. And almost it's like, this is who we are, this is what we do. For bigger brands, it's much harder because they have hundreds of years of trajectory doing things in a particular way. And it's not, and a lot of houses are, especially in luxury, are marketing houses. The supply chain is outsourced elsewhere most of the time. So it's a bigger job because it's tens of thousands of people that have to be engaged beyond the four doors of the house globally, to be actually to think in exactly the same way of what, and to travel the direction which the brands want to travel. So it's a really big challenge because it's not going to happen overnight. And I think that we as consumers are perhaps too hard in terms of we want everything now. And in order to do this well, it takes time. That's called sustainability, is over time. And I think it's, the brands that they have started 20 years ago are in a better place than the brands that wake up today and say, oh gosh, I have to do all of these now. But it's about leapfrogging to the future. It's about innovation, and let's not think about this linear thing of, okay, we need to do this, this, and this. It's about, okay, if in 10 years time we know that our natural resources are being scarce, and in 10 years time climate change is affecting probably these regions of the world, and we know that biodiversity is in decline. I think it's like 30% year on year. It's terrible. What can we do in order not to get to 2030 being totally dependent on a supply chain that we will not be able to fulfill unless we really look at how we can use the power of our brand to regenerate the world? And I've been putting back what we take out. So that's what we're seeing. And I think there is some kind of perhaps optimism, because the decisions of the CEOs now in that direction are being recognized amongst the investment community. And that was the link that never was formed, or perhaps in a very, very delicate way was formed before. Now there is a real business case for sustainability. And if you don't do it, you will miss out profit-wise. I am talking profit, not growth. It's profit-wise.
Yeah, very, very fascinating. I guess the question kind of back to Kaye and Dinah on this point about luxury being perceived as minimalist, and arguably, one of the points that Lara made is also sort of, buying less but quality, and and is potentially a major part of that. How do you think it's, well, maybe not necessarily a major part, but how do you think in terms of your final link on investment and better profitability, how are people making this business case at the moment?
Because actually it's not about buying less, it's perhaps not buying at all. And what I mean this doesn't mean that you will not have access to the product. It's thinking about different business models. Right. So for example, you lease the bag, you pay every year, every month, X amount of money. I use the bag. I have great pleasure of it. I'm so proud of it. And then by the end of it, when I just don't want it anymore, I call Laura and said, by the way, here's your bag. And you take it back, you recycle it, or you upcycle it into something else. So this is not glamorous in any way, but the tires, the tires in the car, that's what they do. They own the tire all the way through. And, it's about thinking about that, refilling, leasing, kind of upcycling, recycling, thinking about this in a completely different way. So rethinking the business models, because this linear way of commerce is not going to be able to be fulfilling with a scenario of 8 billion people in this planet consuming at the rate that we are all consuming. It's not possible. It's not sustainable. It's only one planet. So we have to be innovative in terms of how do we access the things that we love with pride, but then how do we actually put them back and actually think about this in a different way. And I think that the new, I came across a new brand for trainers. I think is you pay $20-something a month and you run, I'm a runner, so you run for 2 years and then you send them back. And then they send you a new pair of trainers. I mean, that have solved my life, my problem of wearing my trainers so often, having to train my trainers every year, because I run probably about 40 kilometers a week. So I completely trash my trainers in no time. But this is great. Somebody else's problem, not mine anymore. I mean, this is something that a lot of companies should be thinking about.
And just to add to that as well, I think from the fashion industry perspective, there's some fundamentals in the system that are actually crazy in terms of the amount of production versus the amount of what's actually sold. I think it's something like 60% of items are sold at their full price, and then the rest is sold at off price or disposed of. So all of this excess that's constantly being produced when it's not actually needed or wanted by anybody, if the business models can shift so they're actually getting the value out of selling something at the full price, or maybe things are overpriced, so they need to review what is the appropriate price for a product. But these kinds of shifts within the industry, as well as looking at circularity models and how we can change into rental options and things like that, will just help the industry ease its impact on the environment as a whole.
Absolutely, and I could not agree more in terms of systemic change, not just like, you know, the plasters in the bath.
Yeah.
But think about, how can I change the bath? Because this kind of is full of holes. So we need to think about systemic change. And also this idea that we can actually go and sell. There are brands, there's a brilliant brand that actually is positive luxury brand, Cecilia Banson. She creates these beautiful, really cool dresses, and the skirts are to die for. She never goes on sale. So where they have the excess stock that they might not have sold, they have this archive, and you can buy the archive, but not on a sell price. You just go back and buy the archive. So it's great. So they produce X, and you can always have these fresh pieces, this collection on 10 collections ago, but they never go on sale. So really, you can actually assure that all the way in your supply chain, you will pay fairly all the time, not just this, you know, kind of now and then you don't really know what happened on the sale. So I think like you're completely, I mean, totally agree with you that the system has to change, and the cycles, the speed of the cycles have to change, because, you know, we don't have 4 seasons anymore. So why do we need 8 collections? So yeah, I mean, I think this is the discussions that a lot of people are having to have, and they have to be bold and brave to have them.
Yeah. And linking that back to more of a communications perspective, that's what's such a challenge. Brands want to step forward and they want to make changes to be more sustainable, more ethical, but they're never going to be perfect, not for a long time. Yes, brands can start out in a much better place, such as Faldan and, you know, more ethical brands, Essènci, but the bigger brands are trapped in this almost fear of this conversation about sustainability, because they're not sustainable, full stop. And so trying to move into that conversation, particularly with today's consumer who has access to social media, digital, can research, can find out everything about your brand, they need to be open to that two-way conversation and be honest about it. And everyone, it's better to be moving in the right direction than not doing anything. But I feel that is a real sticking point for a lot of brands in understanding how to engage in this conversation, because their fear of being held accountable for actually what their businesses are doing and have been doing, and the repercussions that could be quite negatively impacting on their brand. But it's important that honesty and being open to debate, and then actually really learning and listening to your customers, to what's important to them, what they really value, and helping them to understand how your business operates and what your business is doing that is good and that you're planning to improve on, and trying to be optimistic about the future whilst making these changes to move into the future.
I think, just to comment on that, I think that brands are kind of, in large companies, are being forced to do that by their consumers, and specifically because you have so much on the social media that if they don't do that, if they do try to hide, people will find out. And when the consumer finds out, it can be drastic to their bottom line. And that's either, you know, you're talking about supply chains, or even if you think about, you know, what happened with the blackface, or there have been other events that have occurred where when the consumer, you know, someone finds something out or sees something and they share it with the media, it can just be extremely disruptive. And so I think because of that, as companies are thinking more along the line of risk control, if you will, they're being kind of forced into that. Even if they don't want to do it, it's happening, because the risk of doing what they did, the same behavior as the past, is too risky. So it's just to kind of add on to what you were saying.
It's very interesting what you mentioned. I think I would like to add on from the what I call realpolitik of actually having a brand and trying to do a sustainable thing. The reality is that it's very expensive to be sustainable. I know from my own personal experience, when you order packaging and you say, I want it from recycled materials only. I want to make sure that every single component of a product, including the shipping, should be climate neutral. The one positive thing is that there are options. So even for a small brand like us, we can find a recycled paper for our packaging that doesn't look eco, it looks luxury. We can find the options with DHL or other shipping companies that for an extra fee would make a carbon neutral shipping. So those options are there, but when you pull it together, you no longer make a sensible traditional business case. And when you then your only option becomes to be direct to consumer. That is our reality today because we are not making the margins. And this is where, you know, I plead with Diana, who is working in this field, you know, there needs to be a discussion. There's a lot of a discussion about innovation and materials. There is a lot of a discussion about all these components, but this business model changing and the relationship between, for example, brands and retailers, it's such a Pandora's box that requires a lot of debate still. It requires a lot of convincing people saying, well, no, I'm not selling at the price where you can retail it at. And, you know, we did look at Faldan last year when we were launching. I did want to do it leasing as opposed to buying, and we're still looking into it. And all the advisors that was surrounding me said, Laura, it's just too complicated. The fact that you are innovative in function, the fact that you are sustainable and women's female rights, and now you're going to lease it, this is just going to overload the communications. You shouldn't do the whole thing. Do it step by step. So I don't know what you think. Do you see there is a debate? Because a lot of the retailers are saying, Laura, your bag costs so much that, you know, I'm okay to make a smaller margin as direct to consumer, but it's harder for me to sell wholesale to big guys to help me to build that brand.
I don't know the answer on the retail side because that's not what we do, but I do have an answer for you on the sustainability side, collaboration. So what we do at Positive Luxury is, like, our brands, we get them to, if they want to be introduced, we introduce them to each other, because the economy of the scale is everything. So if you want to have this type of paper and these guys will want to have this type of paper, you should get together. And even if both of you are doing skincare, packaging is not a competitive advantage anymore. 10 years ago, yes. Today is your compliance. You should not compete on like which packaging is more sustainable. It's a given. So collaborate, get a lower price point, and off you go. So this is one of the things that, you know, my team, it's spent a lot of time to look at what are the solutions for brands to be able to either collaborate themselves or with external partners. I mean, and in the same type of conversation is like, how do you recycle your props when you put them on the shop? How do you look at packaging systems, or from prop packaging to packaging systems? So, I mean, our job is so exciting because it's like matchmaking, which is the second thing I would do if I would not doing Positive Luxury. Anyhow, it's like matchmaking, and it is so rewarding because you're part of a community, and the only way to solve this agenda is not by ourselves. I can't do it, you can't do it, neither of us on our own can do it. And this is why it's important to have these conversations and collaborate and share, because that is the only way we're gonna actually achieve a 2030 target or a 2050 target, which doesn't actually mean nothing else than surviving as a human race. And if you have children, that your children will have the same childhood that we have been privileged to have. So, you know, we've all to work together. So you have my email address, reach me offline and I'll help you out.
Yeah, no, I absolutely am loving the conversation that really spanned through everything from fundamentally thinking through the business case, business models, direct to consumers, and so on. So definitely, I think there was some such exciting and interesting point. And I know, Yetunde, you're also direct to consumer in the way you also look to approach the market. How I guess one of the things probably for all the panelists is from a consumer standpoint. Do you think that there are still, you know, obviously different segments of consumers, some are sort of more ready to be engaging in the sustainability journeys, and others may still be sort of much more kind of price conscious and sort of, you know, do you think there's any way that can kind of bring more people across the board with their shopping habits? And what are some of the things that you've seen that you find really, really interesting, whether it be business models, the way brands communicate from the direct to consumer channel?
Okay, so for me, I believe that first of all, in general, globally, that consumers are ready for sustainable products, period. I think that, you know, like I said, back in the mid 2000s, maybe not so much. And I think I'll go a step further. I think they're ready for sustainable products, and I think they're ready for sustainable luxury, I'll put in quotes, luxury products, because I try to also refrain from using the word luxury, because as I think Diane had said, the definition of luxury today has changed for the consumer, and I think it's more around craftsmanship, and it's more around taking time for things. But I think these different markets are definitely ready for sustainable products, and ready for sustainable products that take time and that incorporate craftsmanship. And therefore, once again, it's not about consuming, having, you know, these huge big things. It's more of quality over quantity. But where I see from marketing to the consumer, at least with our brand, is where you see the shift is more around generations. So it's more around age group. And I think that how you market your sustainable products and the questions you ask yourself as a brand as to, you know, what aspect of our brand or product should we communicate is dictated by the age of the person. Someone who's 20 is going to be looking for something different than a 30-year-old, than a 40-year-old, and so on. And I think that's really key in communication. And that's what we've found at Essènci. And even, you know, when I think about us creating our Instagram, which is page which has evolved, you know, it's what's been the hardest thing is, you know, how can we create a page or market where we can touch different generations, because our products are made for a 25-year-old as it is for, you know, someone in their 50s. And how can we have it where these age groups that are looking for different, that are entertained by different things and attracted by different aspects of sustainability, how can we engage them? How can we bring them along our journey? So I don't know if I answered your question on that one.
No, I think it's very it's very true that I think how brands can really bring people who are interested in this topic and just know, you know, Diana, you mentioned the kind of trainer example, so that people who actually wanted to try them can actually really start to look into it. We found actually even in the influencer space, it's starting to become more and more interesting as a marketing mix. Not only like they talk a lot more about certain aspects like cruelty-free, reuse, ethical, but also we're starting to see influencers telling us that their followers are actually pushing them with comments, you know, such as, you know, you should try to, you know, find things that are more sustainable. Where is this from? And also like, you know, you're definitely some of the fast fashion aspect. People actually leave comments and say this is too much, etc. So we're definitely seeing that sort of groundswell with influencers kind of talking about specific topic that has a huge resonance. I guess to kind of wrap it up, do you think that there are certain aspects of sustainabilities, you know, in Q1 2020, what we're seeing with Wearisma data was cruelty-free, reuse, and ethical. Do you want to maybe go around and have sort of your predictions on what sort of aspect might actually be sort of top of mind in these influential conversations?
Well, obviously, I would hope that what's going to be on the top of agenda, what I care about, and I really hope that we're going to be going down the direction of conscious consumption, whether it's changing the framework, the way we own things and the way we get access to, whether, you know, we need something. I think this is the bottom line of everything else that builds on top of that. And whether it's going to be 2021 Q1, I don't know, but I hope we're moving that direction. Less is more, and access rather than ownership.
And for me, I mean, I think that's great. Obviously with skincare, that would for us to be a little more difficult outside of, at least with Essènci. We have our packaging our vessels are in porcelain and rechargeable. So there's a bit of that spirit, but I do hope that, and it ties in again with what Laura is saying. But I hope that as we move forward, that individuals are going to be thinking about, I guess, wellness and thinking about, at least within the skincare industry. And I think in general, when you buy something, one is, what is that company about? What are the values of that company? And do the values resonate with you? I think that's number one. And number two would be about, at least within the skincare industry, about people thinking about not just, I guess, external beauty, but internal beauty and exuding outwards. But in order to create that beauty, what are the ingredients that are in your products that you're putting on your skin? And I think a lot in today's world, at least in the beauty industry, where definitely people are becoming more and more cognizant of that. But I do think people still are focused in on, what is it going to do for me? What is it going to do for my skin from an aesthetic, from an aesthetic perspective, rather than, you know, is this healthy for my skin? And I hope that, circling back, that as we move forward, people are more conscious and they're thinking more of their well-being and once again, the values of the company and what kind of impact does that company make, both socially and environmentally. So I hope that's the direction we're going.
I mean, from what we see two sides. On the social side, we see the need of a wider conversation from a diversity and inclusion agenda. And this is like at a board level and directorship level. And this is not the token women or the token Black women. This is really understanding how the process of recruitment should change and appraisal should change throughout the organization. That is the elephant in the room that nobody wants to be talking about, but it's an absolute must. The second point is the care of our planet. So really it's about these regenerative business models, regenerative agriculture, and how we will really play a fundamental role into bettering our planet and have a positive impact in the world. I think the third bigger point is recycling, reusing, like, you know, the waste. Just, I mean, it's not a sexy word, but forgive me, it's like the whole waste piece, and actually circularity is part of that. So how do we actually reframe all of that? And I think the last point to Kaye was about system changing. So how this is how do we need to change the system in order to change the outcomes? So for us, it's less about issue specific and more about strategic thinking on how C-suite can start activating sustainability throughout the organization, because the time for lip service is gone. And COVID has accelerated that. And I mean, although we are not over this yet, I think we will, if companies start doing the work now, we will come out of it much, much stronger. So that's kind of what we're seeing in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I think, to echo everyone's points, from a consumer's perspective, it's about conscious consumption. We've all had time to reflect earlier in the year on what we have, what we own, what we really need, what we can afford, because, you know, realistically, some people are struggling at the moment as well. And it seems like we're going to have more time to reflect over these points over the next few months as well. So really that point for us to all think about consuming less, buying less, buying better, and even, taking that time. I know a lot of my friends have taken the time to learn how to sew, learn how to knit, learn how to mend things, because we're at home and we are reassessing the value of what our products are. And so I predict, yes, hopefully over the next few months, the trend will really be that slowing down, that time to pause, and that conscious decision about what we purchase and what we consume.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. It was a very, very insightful conversation. And thank you, Yetunde, Lara, Kaye, and Diana. To keep up our Disrupting the Timeline video podcast, make sure you follow Wearisma on all social media platforms. If you have questions about any topics discussed or have anything you'd like to know more about, please contact us at hello@wearisma.com. Love to hear from you. Stay safe and be well.